when a veteran and his service dog were kicked out of the cafe for faking his disability. He never expected a Navy SEAL to step up and make one phone call that changed everything. But what happened when 6 more SEALs walked through that door 2 hours later? The smell of fresh coffee hit me as I pushed open the glass door to Rosie's Cafe. My service dog Atlas walked beside me, his black vest clearly marked with the words, "Service Dog, Do Not Pet." I had been looking forward to this moment all week. After 3 sleepless nights filled with nightmares from my time overseas, I finally felt calm enough to try eating in public again. I found a quiet corner table away from the crowd. Atlas settled down beside my chair, his warm body pressed against my leg. This was our routine. He could feel when my anxiety started to spike, and I could feel his steady breathing helping me stay grounded. The morning sun streamed through the window, and for the first time in days, I felt almost normal. The waitress came over with a bright smile. "Good morning. What can I get you started with?" she asked kindly. I ordered black coffee and scrambled eggs, keeping my voice steady even though my hand was shaking slightly. She didn't seem to notice Atlas at first, which was perfect. The best service dogs are the ones nobody pays attention to. But my peace didn't last long. I was halfway through my first sip of coffee when I heard sharp footsteps clicking across the tile floor. A woman in her 40s with perfectly styled blonde hair and a manager's name tag that read Sarah was marching straight toward my table. Her lips were pressed into a thin line, and her arms were crossed tightly across her chest. "Excuse me, sir," she said in a voice that could cut glass. "We don't allow pets in this establishment." My stomach dropped. This was the moment I had been dreading. I took a deep breath and looked up at her calmly. "Ma'am, this is Atlas. He's my service dog, not a pet. He's trained to help me with my disability." Sarah's eyes narrowed as she looked down at Atlas, who hadn't moved a muscle. He was trained to stay focused on me no matter what distractions happen around us. "I don't see any papers or certificates," she said, tapping her foot impatiently. I reached in my wallet and pulled out my veteran ID card along with Atlas's service dog identification. My hands were starting to shake more now, but I kept my voice steady. "Here's my military ID. I served 3 tours in Afghanistan. Atlas is trained to help me with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder." Sarah barely glanced at the cards before handing them back. "Look, I don't care what kind of papers you have. We have health codes to follow. No animals allowed inside, period." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Other customers were starting to stare now. I could hear whispers from nearby tables. "Is that guy trying to sneak his dog inside? Why doesn't he just eat outside? That dog doesn't look blind." My breathing was getting faster. Atlas immediately sensed the change and gently placed his paw on my foot. This was one of his trained responses, deep pressure therapy, to help ground me when I started having a panic attack. But Sarah saw this and got even angrier. "See? That dog just put his dirty paw on you. This is exactly why we don't allow animals in here. It's unsanitary and against health regulations." I tried to explain, my voice getting quieter as more people turned to look. "Ma'am, he's performing a trained task. Service dogs are allowed everywhere by federal law. They're not pets, they're medical equipment." "Medical equipment?" Sarah laughed, but it wasn't a kind laugh. "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. You look perfectly fine to me. There's nothing wrong with you that I can see." Those words cut deeper than she could have known. How many times had I heard that before? "You look fine. It's all in your head. Just get over it." People couldn't see the invisible wounds that kept me awake at night, the memories that made crowds feel dangerous, the way my heart raced when I heard loud noises. "Invisible disabilities are still real disabilities," I said, my voice barely above a whisper now. "I have documentation from my doctor and the VA hospital." "The VA?" Sarah rolled her eyes. "Oh, here we go. Another one of those fake military guys looking for free handouts. I see this all the time. You probably bought that dog vest online and printed up some fake papers." The room felt like it was spinning. Other customers were openly staring now, and I could hear their judgmental whispers getting louder. My chest felt tight, and I was struggling to breathe normally. Atlas pressed closer against my leg, trying to help, but the noise and attention were overwhelming. "Please," I managed to say, "I just want to eat my breakfast in peace. I'm not bothering anyone." "Well, You're bothering me, Sarah snapped. And you're bothering my other customers. Look around. Everyone's staring because you brought an animal into a restaurant. This is disrupting my business. She was right that people were staring, but it wasn't because of Atlas. It was because she was making a scene. Atlas had been perfectly behaved, lying quietly beside my chair without making a sound or bothering anyone. I'm going to ask you one more time nicely, Sarah continued, her voice getting louder. Remove that animal from my restaurant immediately, or I'll have to call the police and have you both removed. My vision was starting to blur around the edges. This was exactly the kind of situation that triggered my worst symptoms. Being confronted, being accused of lying, having everyone stare at me. It brought back too many memories of being questioned and doubted by people who didn't understand what I'd been through. Atlas was doing his best to help, but I could feel a full panic attack coming on. My hand was shaking so badly now that I couldn't hold my coffee cup. Sweat was beading on my forehead despite the cool morning air. Just when I thought I would have to give up and leave, I heard a different kind of footsteps approaching from behind me. These weren't the sharp clicks of Sarah's heels. These were heavy, steady boots that moved with purpose and confidence. The footsteps stopped right behind my chair, and I heard a deep, gravelly voice that carried the kind of authority you only get from years of leading people in dangerous situations. Ma'am, I couldn't help but overhear your conversation with this young man. I turned around to see a man in his early 50s with silver gray hair and shoulders that looked like they could carry the weight of the world. He was wearing a simple black t-shirt and jeans, but something about the way he stood told me he wasn't just any regular customer. His eyes were the kind of sharp blue that seemed to see everything at once. Sarah turned toward him with the same annoyed expression she'd been giving me. Sir, this doesn't concern you. I'm handling a situation with this customer who brought an unauthorized pet into my restaurant. The man's expression didn't change, but I saw his jaw tighten slightly. Actually, ma'am, it does concern me. My name is Marcus, and I'm also a veteran. What you're looking at there is a legitimate service dog performing his job. He stepped around to where Sarah could see him better, and I noticed he was carrying himself like someone who had spent a lot of years in the military. His posture was perfect, his movements were controlled, and when he spoke, every word was clear and deliberate. That young man is protected by federal law, Marcus continued calmly. The Americans with Disabilities Act specifically allows service dogs in all public accommodations, including restaurants. You cannot legally ask him to leave because of his service animal. Sarah's face was getting red now. Oh, great. Another one. Let me guess. You have a fake service dog too? Is this some kind of military scam you guys run together? Marcus reached into his back pocket and pulled out a worn leather wallet. From it, he extracted a card and held it up for Sarah to see. This is my veteran identification card. I served 22 years in the United States Navy. I've seen enough real heroes to recognize one when I see one. He gestured toward me and Atlas. That dog isn't a pet, ma'am. He's a working animal trained to keep this veteran safe and functional. Without that dog, this young man might not be able to leave his house, hold a job, or live a normal life. I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. For the first time since this whole situation started, someone was standing up for me. Someone understood what Atlas meant to me and why I needed him. But Sarah wasn't backing down. If anything, she seemed even more determined now that there were two veterans in her restaurant. I don't care how many military cards you show me. This is my business, and I make the rules here. I'm not running some kind of charity for people who want to bring their pets everywhere they go. Marcus's voice stayed calm, but I could hear steel underneath it. Ma'am, with all due respect, you're not making rules. You're breaking federal law. Service dog discrimination is a serious crime that can result in heavy fines and legal action. Legal action? Sarah laughed, but it sounded forced now. You think you can intimidate me with threats? I've been running this place for 8 years. I know what's legal and what isn't. Do you? Marcus asked quietly. Because right now, you're violating the civil rights of a disabled veteran. You're also creating a hostile environment based on his disability status. That's not just illegal, it's morally wrong. Other customers were watching this exchange with growing interest. I noticed that some of them were starting to look uncomfortable with how Sarah was treating us. A few people were even taking out their phones, probably recording what was happening. Sarah noticed the phones too, and her face got even redder. Everyone put those away. This is a private business matter. Actually, it's a public accommodation matter, Marcus corrected her. This restaurant serves the public, which means it's subject to federal disability laws. You can't just decide those laws don't apply to you. Watch me, Sarah shot back. I'm calling the police right now. We'll see what they have to say about you two troublemakers trying to force your way into my restaurant with unauthorized animals. She pulled out her cell phone and started dialing. Marcus didn't look worried at all. In fact, he looked like he was expecting this to happen. Go ahead and call them, he said calmly. I think you'll find that the police are very familiar with service dog laws. They receive training on the Americans with Disabilities Act as part of their job. While Sarah was on the phone with the police, Marcus pulled out a chair and sat down at my table. Atlas looked up at him briefly, then returned his attention to me. He could sense that I was still anxious, even though having Marcus there was helping. What's your name, son? Marcus asked me quietly. Jake, I managed to answer. My voice was still shaky, but I was starting to breathe more normally. Jake, I want you to know that what's happening here isn't your fault. You have every right to be in this restaurant with your service dog. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I nodded, grateful for his support. Thank you for stepping in. I didn't know what to do. You were doing fine, Marcus assured me. Standing up for your rights isn't always easy, especially when people don't understand. But you handled yourself well. Sarah finished her phone call and came back over to our table. The police are on their way. They'll sort this whole thing out and remove you both from my property. Marcus just nodded. Good. I'm looking forward to talking with them. Something about the way he said that made me think he wasn't worried about the police at all. In fact, he seemed almost pleased that they were coming. There was something else too. I noticed he kept glancing at his phone like he was waiting for something. The next few minutes felt like hours. The other customers were trying to pretend they weren't watching us, but I could feel their eyes on us. Atlas stayed pressed against my leg, providing the steady comfort I needed to keep from having a complete breakdown. Finally, I heard sirens in the distance, getting closer. Sarah smoothed down her hair and put on what I guessed was supposed to be her professional face. Marcus just sat there calmly, occasionally checking his phone. Two police officers walked through the front door. One was a middle-aged white man with sergeant stripes on his uniform. The other was a younger Hispanic woman who looked like she took her job very seriously. Both of them surveyed the scene quickly, their eyes taking in me, Atlas, Marcus, and the obviously agitated Sarah. I'm Sergeant Jenkins, the older officer said. We got a call about a disturbance involving service animals. Can someone tell me what's going on here? Sarah immediately launched into her version of events, talking fast and waving her hand around. These two men are trying to force their way into my restaurant with unauthorized pets. They're claiming they're service dogs, but I think they're just regular pets with fake vests. They're disrupting my business and harassing my staff. Sergeant Jenkins listened patiently, then turned to Marcus and me. Gentlemen, would you like to tell me your side of the story? Before either of us could answer, Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and for the first time since this whole thing started, he smiled slightly. Actually, officer, I think we're about to have some additional witnesses arrive. Marcus put his phone back in his pocket, but not before I caught a glimpse of something that made my blood run cold. The screen showed a text message with just 2 words. En route. 2 minutes. Sergeant Jenkins stepped closer to our table, his partner Officer Martinez right behind him. Sir, can you show me your service dog documentation? He asked me in a respectful tone that was completely different from how Sarah had been talking to me. I pulled out my wallet again, hand still trembling slightly. Here's my veteran ID and Atlas's service dog certification from the VA hospital. I also handed him a letter from my doctor explaining my PTSD diagnosis and need for a psychiatric service dog. Officer Martinez knelt down to Atlas's level, careful not to touch him. Beautiful dog. German Shepherd mix? She asked. Yes, ma'am. He's trained to detect panic attacks and perform deep pressure therapy when I have episodes. My voice was getting steadier now that the officers were treating me with respect. Sergeant Jenkins examined my paperwork carefully. Everything looks legitimate here. This dog is clearly a working service animal. He turned to Sarah with a serious expression. Ma'am, this gentleman has every legal right to be in your establishment with his service dog. Sarah's face turned an even deeper shade of red. But he's disrupting my other customers. Look around. Everyone's staring and whispering. This is bad for business. The only disruption I see is you refusing service to a disabled veteran, Officer Martinez said firmly. That's actually a federal crime under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Marcus leaned back in his chair, checking his phone again. There was something about his calm confidence that made me think he knew something the rest of U.S. didn't. When he caught me looking, he gave me a small nod that somehow made me feel safer. Officers, I've been in the restaurant business for 8 years, Sarah protested. I know the health codes. Dogs carry germs and diseases. What if other customers get sick? Service dogs are specifically exempt from health codes, Sergeant Jenkins explained patiently. They're considered medical equipment, not pets. They're trained to be cleaner and better behaved than most humans. As if to prove his point, Atlas hadn't moved from his position beside my chair. He wasn't begging for food, wasn't bothering other customers, wasn't even looking around the room. His entire focus was on me, watching for any signs that I might need his help. This is ridiculous, Sarah snapped. I'm not going to let some fake soldier with a fake dog ruin my business reputation. The words fake soldier hit me like a physical blow. Marcus's expression went dark, and both police officers stiffened. Officer Martinez stepped forward, her hand resting on a radio. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to be very careful about what you say next, she warned. Accusing a veteran of stolen valor is a serious allegation. Sarah wasn't backing down, though. How do I know he's really military? Anyone can buy a uniform and fake ID online these days. And that dog probably isn't even trained. I bet he just bought that vest on the internet. I felt my chest getting tight again. This was exactly the kind of confrontation that triggered my worst PTSD symptoms. Being accused of lying about my service, having my integrity questioned, it brought back memories of coming home and having people doubt what I'd been through overseas. Atlas immediately sensed my rising anxiety and pressed his warm body against my leg. His weight and steady breathing helped ground me, but I could feel a panic attack building despite his efforts. Marcus stood up slowly, his movements controlled and deliberate. Ma'am, you just made a very serious mistake, he said in a voice so quiet it was almost a whisper. You're now questioning this man's military service and his integrity as a veteran. He rolled up his right sleeve, revealing a tattoo that made both officers take a step back. It was a golden eagle clutching an anchor, trident, and flintlock pistol, the Navy SEAL trident. Below it were the words, "The only easy day was yesterday." I've served alongside heroes for over 2 decades, Marcus continued. I've seen men and women sacrifice everything for this country, and I will not stand here and listen to you disrespect one of them. Sarah's eyes widened as she stared at the tattoo. Even she seemed to understand the significance of what she was seeing. Navy SEALs were elite warriors, the best of the best. This wasn't just any veteran standing in a restaurant. I didn't know, she stammered. You didn't know because you didn't care enough to find out, Marcus replied. You made assumptions and accusations without bothering to learn the truth. Sergeant Jenkins was studying Marcus with new interest. SEAL team, he asked quietly. Team 6, Marcus answered. Retired Master Chief Petty Officer Marcus Rodriguez. The room went completely silent. Even the other customers had stopped their conversations to listen. Team 6 was legendary, the most elite counterterrorism unit in the world. These were the people who took on the most dangerous missions that nobody else could handle. Officer Martinez looked impressed. My brother served in the Navy. He always said SEALs were something special. We're all something special, Marcus said, gesturing toward me. Every person who puts on a uniform and serves their country deserves respect and dignity, not accusations and harassment. Sarah was looking increasingly uncomfortable now. She glanced around the restaurant, probably noticing that several customers were recording the interaction on their phones. This was not going to be good for her business reputation. Look, maybe I was a little hasty, she said, trying to backtrack, but you have to understand my position. I have to protect my business and my other customers. Your other customers seem fine, Officer Martinez observed. The only person causing a disturbance here is you. Marcus checked his phone one more time, and this time he actually smiled. Officers, I think we're about to have some additional witnesses to this situation. Before anyone could ask what he meant, the bell above the front door chimed. 6 men in civilian clothes walked into the restaurant, but even in jeans and t-shirts, they moved with the same controlled precision as Marcus. Their eyes swept the room, taking in every detail, assessing the situation in seconds. The man in front was tall and lean with dark hair and cold gray eyes. He walked straight to our table with the confidence of someone used to being in charge of life and death situations. Master Chief Rodriguez, he said, giving Marcus a respectful nod. We got your message. Sarah's mouth fell open as she realized that Marcus hadn't just been making idle threats. He had actually called for backup, and that backup had just walked through her door. Gentlemen, Marcus said, standing to greet the newcomers. I'd like you to meet Jake, a fellow veteran who's been having some trouble getting the respect he deserves. The leader of the group turned to look at me, and I felt like I was being evaluated by someone who could see right through me. After a moment, his expression softened slightly. Marine, he asked, noticing something in my posture or bearing that identified my branch of service. Yes, sir. 3 tours in Afghanistan. I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. He nodded approvingly. Semper Fi, Marine. I'm Commander Jake Thompson, Navy SEALs. We heard you were having some issues with discrimination. Sarah was now looking around the room desperately, probably wondering how a simple complaint about a dog had turned into a meeting of elite military personnel in a restaurant. I think there's been a misunderstanding, she said weakly. Oh, I don't think there's any misunderstanding at all, Commander Thompson replied, his voice carrying the kind of authority that made people listen whether they wanted to or not. Commander Thompson's gray eyes swept across the restaurant, taking in every detail like he was assessing a battlefield. The 5 other SEALs spread out casually, but I could tell they were positioning themselves strategically around the room. This wasn't just a social visit. Ma'am, are you the manager of this establishment? Commander Thompson asked Sarah, his voice perfectly polite but somehow terrifying at the same time. Why, yes, I'm Sarah Mitchell, the owner, she stammered, clearly overwhelmed by the sudden appearance of 6 Navy SEALs in her restaurant. Ms. Mitchell, I understand you've been having some difficulty understanding federal disability laws, the commander said. Specifically, the Americans with Disabilities Act as it relates to service animals. Sergeant Jenkins stepped forward. Commander, we were just explaining to Ms. Mitchell that this gentleman's service dog is completely legitimate and protected by law. I appreciate that, Sergeant, Commander Thompson replied. But this situation has escalated beyond a simple misunderstanding. This Marine has been publicly humiliated, accused of fraud, and denied his civil rights. That makes it our concern. One of the other SEALs, a stocky man with sandy brown hair, moved closer to our table. I noticed he had a slight limp, probably from an old injury. Ma'am, my name is Chief Petty Officer Mike Stevens. I also have a service dog for PTSD. What you did to this Marine, you did to all of us. Sarah's eyes darted between the SEALs, clearly trying to figure out how to handle the situation. Gentlemen, I think there's been a huge misunderstanding. I was just trying to follow health regulations. No, ma'am, Commander Thompson interrupted. You were discriminating against a disabled veteran. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a federal crime. Atlas had been watching all of this quietly, but I could feel his body tense against my leg. He was picking up on my rising anxiety as the situation continued to escalate. Having all these people focused on me and my problems was making me uncomfortable, even though they were trying to help. Officer Martinez noticed Atlas's behavior. Your dog is very well trained, she said to me. He's been perfect this whole time. Thank you, I managed to say. He knows when I'm getting overwhelmed. Commander Thompson heard this, and his expression softened slightly. Marine, what's your name? Jake Morrison, sir. Lance Corporal, retired. Well, Jake, you've got nothing to be ashamed of here. You served your country with honor, and you deserve to be treated with respect everywhere you go. Master Chief Rodriguez had been quiet during this exchange, but now he spoke up. Commander, I think Ms. Mitchell needs to understand the full scope of what she's dealing with here. Sarah looked confused. What do you mean? What I mean, Rodriguez explained, is that you didn't just insult one veteran today. You insulted all of us. And when you attack one of our brothers, you attack all of us. The SEAL with the limp, Chief Stevens, nodded. We don't leave our people behind, ma'am. Not on the battlefield, and not in civilian life either. I was starting to feel overwhelmed by all the attention and support. Part of me was grateful, but another part of me just wanted to disappear. This was exactly the kind of confrontation and crowd situation that made my PTSD symptoms worse. Atlas sensed my distress and gently nudged my hand with his nose. This was his signal that he thought I needed to use one of my coping techniques. I took a deep breath and tried to focus on his warm presence beside me. Commander Thompson noticed the interaction between me and Atlas. Your dog is telling you something, isn't he? Yes, sir. He can sense when I'm getting too anxious. He's trained to redirect my attention when I start having flashbacks or panic attacks. Outstanding training, the commander said approvingly. Those dogs save lives every day. They're not pets. They're not therapy animals. They're working medical equipment that keeps veterans functional and alive. Sarah was listening to this exchange with growing understanding. For the first time, she seemed to be realizing what she had actually done. I didn't understand, she said quietly. I thought people were just trying to bring their pets places they weren't supposed to go. That's exactly the problem, Officer Martinez said. You made assumptions instead of asking questions or doing research. Service dog laws exist for a reason. Another one of the SEALs, a tall African-American man with sergeant stripes tattooed on his forearm, stepped forward. Ma'am, my name is Petty Officer First Class David Johnson. I want you to understand something important. This Marine sitting here probably saved lives overseas. He put himself in danger to protect people he'd never met. And when he came home, his country failed him. Johnson's words hit me hard because they were true. Coming home had been almost as difficult as being deployed. The nightmares, the crowds, the constant feeling of being on edge. Civilian life was its own kind of battlefield. The VA system is overwhelmed, Johnson continued. Veterans wait months or years for help. Many of them never get the support they need. This dog sitting here is probably the difference between this Marine being able to function in society or being trapped in his house by his own mind. Sarah was looking more and more uncomfortable as the reality of the situation sank in. I really didn't know, she said again, but this time she sounded sincere instead of defensive. Ignorance isn't an excuse when it comes to civil rights, Commander Thompson said firmly. But it can be corrected with education and proper action. Sergeant Jenkins had been taking notes throughout this conversation. Ms. Mitchell, you should know that this incident is being documented. Depending on how you handle this moving forward, there could be legal consequences. What kind of legal consequences? Sarah asked, her voice getting smaller. Civil rights violations can result in federal lawsuits, heavy fines, and mandatory training programs. Officer Martinez explained. The Americans with Disabilities Act has serious teeth when it comes to enforcement. Master Chief Rodriguez checked his phone again. Commander, we might have another issue developing. What kind of issue? Thompson asked, immediately alert. I'm getting reports from the team outside. It looks like someone called the local news station. There's a camera crew setting up in the parking lot. Sarah's face went completely white. News crew? Oh no. Oh no. This is going to ruin my business. That depends entirely on how you handle the next few minutes, Commander Thompson said. You can either be the villain in this story, or you can be someone who learned from their mistake and did the right thing. I was feeling more and more anxious as the situation continued to grow. What had started as me just try to eat breakfast had turned into a major incident with police, Navy SEALs, and now news crews. Atlas was doing his best to keep me calm, but I could feel my heart racing. Jake, Master Chief Rodriguez said, noticing my distress. You okay, son? This is getting really big, I said quietly. I just wanted to eat breakfast. I know, he said kindly, but sometimes doing the right thing means dealing with situations that get bigger than we expected. You're not alone in this. Commander Thompson was watching the front door carefully. Rodriguez, what's our timeline on that news crew? Maybe 5 minutes before they're ready to roll, Rodriguez answered. The commander turned back to Sarah. Ms. Mitchell, you have about 5 minutes to decide how this story ends. You can either apologize sincerely and make this right, or you could try to defend your actions and face the consequences. Sarah looked around the room at all the faces staring back at her, the police officers, the Navy SEALs, the other customers who were still recording everything on their phones. She seemed to realize that she was completely outnumbered and out of options. What do you want me to do? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. But before anyone could answer, Atlas suddenly stood up and walked to the front window. His body went rigid, and he started showing signs of alerting to something outside. This wasn't his normal behavior for helping me with anxiety. This was something else entirely. Commander Thompson noticed Atlas's behavior immediately. What's your dog seeing out there, Jake? Atlas's entire body went stiff as he stared out the front window, his ears forward and his tail completely still. This wasn't his normal alert for my anxiety. This was something much more serious. I followed his gaze and saw a man in a dark hoodie standing behind one of the news vans in the parking lot. He was trying to stay hidden, but Atlas had spotted him immediately. The man kept looking toward the restaurant and checking his phone, like he was waiting for something or someone. Commander, I said quietly, Atlas is trained for more than just PTSD. He also does security work. When he alerts like this, it means he's detected a potential threat. Commander Thompson was beside me in an instant, his trained eyes scanning the parking lot. Where? He asked, his voice completely changed from the calm tone he'd been using with Sarah. Behind the white news van, guy in the dark hoodie. He's been watching the restaurant for the past few minutes. The other SEALs immediately moved into position without being told. Chief Stevens casually walked to the back door, while Petty Officer Johnson positioned himself near the front entrance. The other three spread out to cover different windows. They did this so smoothly that most of the customers didn't even notice. Could be just a curious bystander, Master Chief Rodriguez said, but his hand was already reaching for something under his jacket. Maybe, Commander Thompson replied, but your dog doesn't think so. And I've learned to trust working dogs. They see things we miss. Alice was still focused on the man outside, his muscles tense and ready. He had been trained by the military before becoming my service dog, and his security instincts were still sharp. If he thought that man was a threat, then I believed him. Sergeant Jenkins noticed the change in atmosphere. Is there a problem, gentlemen? Possibly, Commander Thompson said. We're just being cautious. Sarah was looking back and forth between all of us, confusion written all over her face. What's happening? Why is everyone acting so strange all of a sudden? Ma'am, I need you to stay calm and keep your voice down, Officer Martinez said quietly. We're just checking on something outside. The man in the hoodie was still there, but now he was talking on his phone. Even from inside the restaurant, I could see that he was getting agitated about something. He kept gesturing toward the building and checking his watch. This doesn't feel right, I said to Commander Thompson. Why would someone be hiding behind a news van watching us? Good question, the commander replied. Rodriguez, can you get a better view from the side window? Master Chief Rodriguez moved to a different position, careful to stay out of sight. I can see him better now. He's definitely focused on this building, not just watching the news crew. Atlas suddenly took a step backward from the window, which was his trained signal that a threat was getting closer. My heart started racing, and I felt that familiar tightness in my chest that meant my PTSD was kicking in. He's moving, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Atlas is telling me the threat is getting closer. Commander Thompson made a quick hand signal to his team. All of the SEALs tensed up, ready for action. Jake, I need you to move away from the window. Take Atlas and go sit at that table in the back corner. I started to get up, but my legs felt shaky. The combination of my anxiety about the confrontation with Sarah and now this new threat was overwhelming my system. Atlas immediately sensed my distress and pressed against my leg to provide support. I've got you, Master Chief Rodriguez said, helping me to the back table. Just breathe, son. We're going to handle this. The other customers were starting to notice that something was wrong. People were whispering and looking around nervously. A few families with small children were getting ready to leave. Should we evacuate the restaurant? Sergeant Jenkins asked. Not yet, Commander Thompson said. We don't want to cause a panic if this turns out to be nothing. But everyone stay alert. Sarah was now looking scared instead of angry. Is someone trying to hurt us? Is this because of what happened with the service dog? We don't know yet, Officer Martinez said. But we're prepared for anything. The man in the hoodie was now walking toward the front door of the restaurant. He had his hands in his pockets and kept looking around like he was checking to make sure no one was watching him. But we were all watching him. He's coming in, Chief Stevens reported from his position near the back door. Should I intercept? Negative, Commander Thompson said. Let him come in. We need to see what he wants. Atlas was now fully alert, his attention focused on the front door. His training was telling him that danger was approaching, and he was ready to protect me if necessary. I could feel his muscles tensing under his vest. The front door opened, and the man in the hoodie stepped inside. He was young, maybe in his 20s, with angry eyes and a scraggly beard. He looked around the restaurant until his gaze landed on our group in the back. Which one of you is Jake Morrison? He asked in a loud voice that made everyone in the restaurant turn to look. My blood ran cold. How did this stranger know my name? I hadn't told anyone my full name except Commander Thompson and the police officers. And why was he looking for me specifically? Commander Thompson stepped forward, placing himself between the stranger and me. Who's asking? I'm asking, the young man said, his voice getting louder and more aggressive. I heard on the police scanner that there was some kind of incident here involving a fake veteran with a fake service dog. I came to see for myself. And you are? Sergeant Jenkins asked, his hand moving toward his radio. Danny Patterson. And I'm here to tell you that this whole thing is a scam. That guy isn't a real veteran, and that dog isn't a real service dog. I know because I've been watching him for weeks. The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. Someone had been watching me? Following me? My breathing became shallow and fast, and I felt like the room was spinning. Atlas immediately went into action, positioning himself between me and Danny while also providing the deep pressure therapy I needed. His warm weight against my leg helped ground me, but I could still feel a panic attack building. Weeks? Commander Thompson asked, his voice deadly calm. You've been stalking this Marine for weeks? I haven't been stalking anyone, Danny shot back. I've been investigating. There are too many people faking disabilities these days, taking advantage of the system. Someone needs to expose them. Master Chief Rodriguez moved closer to Danny, his expression dangerous. Son, you just made a very serious accusation against a decorated veteran. I hope you have proof to back that up. Danny pulled out his phone and started scrolling through photos. I've got pictures of him walking his dog in the park without the service vest. I've got video of him at the grocery store acting perfectly normal. If he's so disabled, why can he do all these normal things? I felt tears starting to form in my eyes. This was my worst nightmare, being stalked and having my privacy violated by someone who didn't understand invisible disabilities. People like Danny thought that if you could walk or talk or function at all, then you weren't really disabled. You don't understand, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. PTSD isn't visible. Just because I can grocery shop doesn't mean I'm not disabled. PTSD. Danny laughed, but it wasn't a kind laugh. Right. The convenient excuse that everyone uses these days. You look fine to me. That's when something inside Commander Thompson seemed to snap. His calm demeanor disappeared, and he took a step toward Danny that made the younger man back up toward the door. Son, the commander said in a voice that could freeze blood, you just made the biggest mistake of your life. Commander Thompson's gray eyes turned to ice as he stared down Danny Patterson. The temperature in the restaurant seemed to drop 20 degrees as every SEAL in the room shifted into combat mode without making a sound. You've been stalking a disabled veteran for weeks, the commander said, each word precise and cutting. Taking pictures without his permission, violating his privacy, following him to public places. Do you have any idea what you just confessed to? Danny's face went pale as he realized he might have said too much. I wasn't stalking anyone. I was just investigating fraud. Investigating? Master Chief Rodriguez stepped forward, his 22 years of military experience evident in every movement. What gives you the right to investigate anyone? Are you a police officer? A federal agent? A doctor qualified to diagnose PTSD? I'm a concerned citizen, Danny stammered, but his confidence was fading fast. You're a criminal, Officer Martinez said, pulling out her handcuffs. What you've described is harassment, stalking, and invasion of privacy, all of which are serious crimes. I was struggling to breathe normally as the reality of the situation hit me. Someone had been watching me, following me, taking pictures of me without my knowledge. All the times I'd felt like someone was watching me, I thought it was just my PTSD making me paranoid. But I'd been right. Atlas sensed my rising panic and immediately began deep pressure therapy, leaning his full weight against my legs. His warmth and steady breathing helped anchor me to the present moment, but I could still feel my heart racing. "Jake," Commander Thompson said, his voice gentler now as he addressed me. "Are you okay? Do you need medical attention?" I can't believe someone was watching me," I managed to say between shaky breaths. "I thought I was being paranoid." "You weren't being paranoid," Chief Stevens said firmly. "Your instincts were correct. That's your military training working properly." Danny was looking around the room desperately, probably realizing that he was outnumbered and in serious trouble. "Look, I didn't mean any harm. I just think there's too much fraud in the veteran community these days." "Fraud?" Petty Officer Johnson's voice was like steel. "You want to talk about fraud? Let me tell you about real fraud. Real fraud is someone who never served, questioning the sacrifices of those who did." "I support the troops," Danny protested weakly. "No, you don't," Commander Thompson said. "If you supported the troops, you'd respect their service and their struggles. You wouldn't stalk them and harass them and try to humiliate them in public." Sergeant Jenkins was taking notes, while Officer Martinez prepared to arrest Danny. "Mr. Patterson, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." "Wait," Danny said, panic creeping into his voice. "I can prove he's faking. Look at these pictures." He held up his phone, showing photos he'd taken of me at various places around town. There were pictures of me walking Atlas in the park, shopping at the grocery store, even sitting on a bench reading a book. All perfectly normal activities that proved absolutely nothing about my disability status. "Those pictures prove nothing except that you've been stalking him," Master Chief Rodriguez said. "Having PTSD doesn't mean you can't leave your house. It doesn't mean you can't walk your dog or buy groceries. But he looks normal in all of them," Danny insisted. "That's because PTSD is an invisible disability," Officer Martinez explained as she continued reading Danny's rights. "Mental health conditions don't show up in photographs." Sarah, who had been watching this whole scene unfold, finally spoke up. "I'm starting to understand why I was so wrong earlier. I was looking for visible signs of disability too, wasn't I?" "Yes, you were," Commander Thompson said, "and that's a common mistake. But the difference is that you're willing to learn. This young man is not." Atlas was still providing pressure therapy, but I could feel my panic attack slowly subsiding. Having the SEALs handle the situation was helping me feel safer, even though I was still shaken by the revelation that I'd been stalked. "How long has this been going on?" I asked Danny, my voice getting stronger. "A few weeks," he admitted. "I first saw you at the VA hospital and thought you looked too young and healthy to be disabled. So I started following you to see if you were really using that dog for medical reasons." "You followed him from the VA hospital?" Chief Stevens asked, his voice dangerous. "That's federal property. You committed a federal crime." Danny's face went white as he realized the implications. "I didn't know that was illegal. Ignorance of the law is not a defense," Officer Martinez said, finishing the arrest procedure. "You're under arrest for stalking, harassment, and invasion of privacy." As she led Danny toward the door, he looked back at me one more time. "I still think you're faking it. Real veterans don't need emotional support dogs." That comment made every SEAL in the room tense up like they were about to spring into action. Commander Thompson held up a hand to keep them calm, but his expression showed exactly what he thought of Danny's statement. "Son," the commander said, his voice carrying 20 years of combat experience, I've lost more good men to PTSD and suicide than I lost in actual combat. Mental health injuries are just as real and just as serious as physical ones. Maybe more so, because they're harder to treat and people like you make them worse. Danny was let out of the restaurant in handcuffs, and I felt like I could finally breathe again. But the trauma of learning I'd been stalked was still affecting me. My hands were shaking, and I felt dizzy and nauseous. "Jake, you're having a panic attack," Master Chief Rodriguez said, sitting down beside me. "Focus on your breathing. In through your nose, out through your mouth." Atlas had moved to lie across my feet, providing maximum pressure therapy. His steady presence helped me focus on Rodriguez's breathing instructions instead of the overwhelming thoughts racing through my mind. "That's it," Rodriguez said calmly. "You're safe now. The threat is gone." Commander Thompson was talking quietly with the police officers, making sure they had all the information they needed to prosecute Danny. The other SEALs were checking the parking lot to make sure there weren't any other threats. "I feel so stupid," I said once my breathing had returned to normal. "I kept thinking someone was watching me, but I convinced myself it was just paranoia." "That wasn't stupid," Chief Stevens said. "That was your survival instincts working correctly. The military trained you to notice when you're being watched. That training saved you today." Sarah approached our table hesitantly. "Jake, I owe you a huge apology. I had no idea what you were going through. I was just as ignorant as that man who was stalking you." I looked up at her, seeing genuine remorse in her eyes for the first time. "Thank you for saying that. Can I ask you something?" Sarah said. "How can I make this right? How can I learn to do better?" Commander Thompson overheard and joined the conversation. "Education is the first step. Learn about invisible disabilities. Train your staff on service dog loss. Make sure this never happens to another veteran." "I will," Sarah promised. "I'll do whatever it takes to make sure this restaurant is a safe place for all veterans." Outside, I could see the news crew was still setting up their equipment. But now the story had changed completely. Instead of just being about service dog discrimination, it was about a veteran being stalked by someone who questioned his disability. "Are you ready to talk to the media?" Commander Thompson asked me. "You don't have to if you're not comfortable with it." I thought about it for a moment. Part of me wanted to hide from all the attention, but another part of me realized that this could help other veterans who were facing similar challenges. "I think I need to," I said finally. "If my story can help other people understand invisible disabilities, then maybe something good can come out of this." Atlas wagged his tail slightly, as if he approved of my decision. Whatever happened next, I knew I wasn't facing it alone anymore. The news camera was rolling, and I was sitting across from reporter Jessica Chun with Atlas lying calmly at my feet. But something was wrong. Atlas kept glancing toward the kitchen door, his ears twitching at sounds I couldn't hear. "Jake, can you tell our viewers how it felt to be discriminated against because of your service dog?" Jessica asked, her microphone pointed toward me. I started to answer, but Atlas suddenly stood up and moved between me and the kitchen. His body went rigid, and he gave me the specific alert that meant danger nearby. This wasn't his normal anxiety response. This was his military training kicking in. "I'm sorry," I said to Jessica, "but I need to pay attention to my dog right now. He's telling me something important." Commander Thompson, who was standing off to the side, immediately picked up on Atlas's behavior. He made a quick hand signal to Master Chief Rodriguez, who was positioned near the front door. "What's your dog detecting?" Commander Thompson asked quietly, moving closer to our table. "He's trained for security work too," I explained, keeping my voice low. "When he alerts like this, it means he's picked up on a potential threat. Something in the kitchen area." Jessica looked confused. "Is there a problem with the interview?" "Just give us a moment," Commander Thompson said, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. The other SEALs had noticed the change in atmosphere and were already moving into position. Chief Stevens casually walked toward the kitchen, while Petty Officer Johnson positioned himself near the back exit. They moved so smoothly that the camera crew didn't even realize what was happening. Atlas's alert was getting stronger. He was now facing the kitchen door directly, his tail straight and his muscles tense. This was the same posture he'd shown when he detected the stalker outside, but more intense. "Rodriguez," Commander Thompson said quietly, Take Jake and his dog to the far corner, away from the kitchen. What's going on? Sarah asked, her voice shaky. She had been standing nearby, hoping to be interviewed about how she'd learned from her mistakes. Probably nothing, Master Chief Rodriguez said, but his hand was already moving toward his concealed weapon. Just being cautious. As we moved away from the kitchen, I could hear voices coming from the back room. There were at least two people talking, and they sounded angry. One voice was definitely male, and it sounded familiar. That's Danny's voice, I said suddenly. The guy who was stalking me. But he was arrested. How's he back here? Commander Thompson's expression went cold. Rodriguez, call for backup. Now. Before Rodriguez could respond, the kitchen door swung open. Danny Patterson walked out, no longer in handcuffs. Behind him was another man I'd never seen before, older, with a mean face and tattoos covering his arms. There he is, Danny said, pointing at me. The fake veteran I was telling you about, Uncle Rick. The older man, Rick, looked at me with pure hatred in his eyes. So you're the one causing trouble for my nephew, making him look bad with all your fake military stories. Sergeant Jenkins, who had been talking to other officers outside, came running back into the restaurant when he heard the commotion. How did Patterson get out of custody? He demanded. Posted bail an hour ago, Officer Martinez said, following close behind. But he's supposed to stay away from Jake. This violates his restraining order. Rick laughed, but it wasn't a friendly sound. Restraining orders don't scare me, and neither do a bunch of fake soldiers playing dress-up. That comment made every SEAL in the room go completely still. The temperature seemed to drop as 6 of America's most elite warriors focused their attention on Rick. Sir, Commander Thompson said, his voice deadly calm, I'm going to give you one chance to walk out of here peacefully. Or what? Rick sneered. You going to call more of your fake military buddies? Master Chief Rodriguez stepped forward, his 22 years of service evident in every movement. Son, you're about to make a mistake you can't take back. Atlas was now fully alert, positioned protectively in front of me. His military training was telling him that a confrontation was about to happen, and he was ready to defend me if necessary. Danny was looking around the room nervously, probably realizing that bringing his uncle here hadn't been a smart idea. Uncle Rick, maybe we should just leave? There are a lot of them. I'm not afraid of some weekend warriors, Rick said, reaching into his jacket. That's when everything changed. Commander Thompson moved faster than I'd ever seen anyone move, covering the distance between him and Rick in 2 steps. At the same time, the other SEALs surrounded Danny and Rick from all directions. Hands where I can see them, Sergeant Jenkins shouted, drawing his weapon. Rick slowly pulled his hand out of his jacket, revealing a knife with a 6-inch blade. I came here to teach this fake soldier a lesson about lying. Put the weapon down, Officer Martinez commanded, her gun also drawn. The news camera was still rolling, capturing everything. Jessica and her crew had backed away to a safe distance, but they were still filming. This was turning into a much bigger story than anyone had expected. You want to know about fake soldiers? Commander Thompson said, his voice like ice. Real soldiers protect people. They don't threaten disabled veterans with knives. Rick was now completely surrounded by armed police officers and Navy SEALs. He looked around wildly, probably realizing that he was outnumbered and outgunned. This isn't over, he said, but his voice was shaking now. Yes, it is, Master Chief Rodriguez replied. Drop the knife and get on the ground. Atlas was still alert, but he had moved slightly behind me, which meant he sensed the immediate danger was being controlled. His training told him to protect me, but also to stay out of the way when professionals were handling a threat. The standoff lasted only a few more seconds before Rick dropped the knife and raised his hands. Officer Martinez and Sergeant Jenkins moved in quickly to arrest both Rick and Danny again. 2 arrests in one day. Danny said miserably as the handcuffs went back on. Should have stayed home, Chief Stevens commented. As Rick and Danny were led away for the second time, I realized my hand was shaking again. The combination of the morning's discrimination, learning I'd been stalked, and now being threatened with a weapon was overwhelming my system. Atlas immediately sensed my distress and began deep pressure therapy, leaning his full weight against my legs. His steady breathing and warm presence helped ground me, but I could feel tears starting to form in my eyes. "Jake," Commander Thompson said, sitting down beside me. "You did great. Your dog detected the threat before any of us knew there was a problem." "I just wanted to eat breakfast," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "I know," he replied, "but sometimes standing up for what's right leads to bigger things. You helped expose discrimination, caught a stalker, and now you've helped prevent someone from getting hurt with that knife." Jessica approached us carefully, her camera crew following at a respectful distance. "Jake, if you're willing, I think our viewers need to hear what really happened here today." I looked around the restaurant at all the people who had stood up for me, the police officers, the Navy SEALs, even Sarah, who had learned from her mistakes. Atlas wagged his tail slightly, as if he was encouraging me to tell our story. "Okay," I said finally. "Let's do this." The bright lights from the news camera felt overwhelming, but Atlas pressed closer to my leg, reminding me that I wasn't alone. Commander Thompson sat beside me, while Master Chief Rodriguez and the other SEALs stood nearby like protective guardians. "Jake, this morning started with discrimination against your service dog, but it became something much bigger," Jessica said, her voice gentle but professional. "Can you tell us what this day has meant to you?" I took a deep breath, feeling Atlas's steady warmth against my leg. "This morning, I just wanted to eat breakfast like any normal person. I never expected to face discrimination, discover I was being stalked, or be threatened with a knife. But I also never expected to find so many people willing to stand up for what's right." "How did it feel when Sarah first told you to leave because of Atlas?" The memory still hurt, but I found I could talk about it now. It felt like being punched in the stomach. When people question your disability or your service dog, they're questioning everything you've been through. They're saying your struggles aren't real. Commander Thompson leaned forward slightly. "What people don't understand is that invisible disabilities are often the hardest ones to live with. Jake's service dog isn't just a companion. Atlas is medical equipment that keeps Jake functional and alive." Sarah stepped into view of the camera, her face showing genuine remorse. "I was completely wrong this morning. I made assumptions based on ignorance. I thought I knew what disability looked like, but I was discriminating against a hero who served our country." "What would you say to other business owners who might face similar situations?" Jessica asked Sarah. "Educate yourself," Sarah said firmly. "Learn the laws about service dogs. Understand that disabilities aren't always visible. And treat every customer with respect and dignity, especially our veterans who sacrificed so much." I felt proud of Sarah for admitting her mistakes publicly. It took courage to face a camera and admit you were wrong in front of thousands of viewers. "Jake," Jessica continued, "finding out you were being stalked must have been terrifying." "It was," I admitted. "For weeks, I thought I was being paranoid when I felt like someone was watching me. But my military training and Atlas's alerts were telling me something was wrong. I just didn't trust my own instincts." Master Chief Rodriguez spoke up. "That's common with PTSD. Veterans often second-guess their survival instincts. But Jake's instincts were correct. His training saved him today." And then Rick Patterson showed up with a knife, Jessica said. "How did you feel when that threat escalated?" "Scared," I said honestly, "but also grateful. I had 6 Navy SEALs, 2 police officers, and my service dog all working to keep me safe. I wasn't facing this alone." Commander Thompson nodded. "That's what brotherhood means. We don't leave our people behind, whether on the battlefield or in civilian life. When someone attacks one veteran, they attack all of us." "What message do you want to send to other veterans who might be watching?" Jessica asked. I thought carefully about my answer. Don't give up. Don't let people make you feel ashamed of your disabilities or your service dog. You earn the right to be treated with respect. And there are people out there who will stand up for you when you need it most. Atlas has been incredible throughout this entire ordeal, Jessica observed. Can you tell us about his training? Atlas is trained for both psychiatric service work and security, I explained, stroking his head gently. He can detect panic attacks before they happen, provide deep pressure therapy, and alert me to potential threats. Today, he detected both the stalker outside and the danger in the kitchen before any of us knew there was a problem. Atlas wagged his tail slightly at the attention, but kept his focus on me. Even during the interview, he was monitoring my stress levels and ready to provide help if needed. Chief Rodriguez, as a veteran with over 20 years of service, what would you like people to understand about veterans with PTSD? Rodriguez's expression was serious as he answered. PTSD isn't a sign of weakness. It's a normal response to abnormal situations. These veterans face combat, explosions, and life-or-death decisions that most people can't imagine. Coming home and readjusting to civilian life is its own kind of battle. And service dogs play a crucial role in that battle, Commander Thompson added. These dogs are trained professionals, just like the veterans they serve. They're not pets or emotional support animals. They're highly skilled medical equipment. Jessica turned back to me. Jake, how has today changed you? It's shown me that standing up for yourself is worth it, even when it's scary, I said. It's also shown me that there are good people everywhere who will do the right thing when they understand the truth. What happens now? Now I keep living my life, I said, feeling stronger than I had all day. I'll keep working with Atlas, keep going to therapy, and keep being proud of my service. And hopefully, our story will help other people understand that invisible disabilities are real and that veterans deserve respect and support. Commander Thompson handed me a business card. Jake, you ever need anything at all, you call me. The SEAL community takes care of our own, and that includes our brother Marines. As the interview wrapped up, I realized that what had started as the worst day I'd had in months had turned into something positive. The discrimination and threats were terrible, but they had also brought out the best in people. Sarah approached as the cameras stopped rolling. Jake, your breakfast is on the house today, and every day you want to come here. This restaurant will always be a safe place for you and Atlas. Other customers who had witnessed everything came over to shake my hand and thank me for my service. Several people said they had learned something important about disabilities and service dogs. As we prepared to leave, Atlas walked proudly beside me, his tail wagging. He had done his job perfectly today, protecting me, alerting to threats, and helping me through multiple panic attacks. You ready to go home, buddy? I asked him. He looked up at me with his intelligent brown eyes and wagged his tail harder. We had both survived a difficult day, but we had also made a difference. Sometimes that's all you can ask for. Commander Thompson and the other SEALs walked us to my car, making sure we got there safely. As I drove away from Rosie's Cafe, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Maybe tomorrow would be better. And if it wasn't, I knew I had Atlas by my side and a brotherhood of warriors who had my back.